Welcome everyone to another weekend and indeed another instalment of Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast where I talk about all the comings and goings in the worlds of vintage computing, vintage gaming, retro gaming. You know all that stuff. You know the drill by now. How are you all doing? I hope you're doing very well. Nice to have you with me again this week. And yeah, I think the big piece of news this week that we can't escape from is, of course, the big political upset that has happened in the UK this week. I think it's had an impact on all of our lives. Really big news. And I know I don't do politics on this podcast, but I think it just bears kind of acknowledging and just kind of talking about because it's something that's caused quite a stir. And I am, of course, talking about the idiot that took a load of Atari ST stuff to an Amiga show last weekend. And that idiot is me. And I put out a video all about it, a bit of a vlog type of video. And that video has gone down an absolute storm. It's been really well received. And it's been so great to see everybody's feedback and that on stuff. I should also give a bit of a shout out to Clint, of course, from LGR. The video was a shameless rip-off of his VCF Southwest vlog, which had come out just days before. And I watched that and I thought, you know what, that's really interesting. I'm not going to have time to put together a proper thing, go around and interview people and talk to people. And I don't really want to be spending a lot of time sort of scripting things and doing a voiceover and stuff afterwards. So let's just do that. Let's do a vlog type video. Of course, he didn't invent the format, but have to acknowledge that it is heavily inspired by him. And this is my own quaint little British version of that, based around a quaint little British computer show, of course. And of course, it was the Kickstart Amiga show. It took place last weekend, about an hour north of me in Nottingham. And it's the second year that I've been, but it's the first year that I've had an actual table and actually exhibited at one of these things. I know Ravi, the guy who organises it. You may indeed know him from the Retro Hour podcast, excellent retro gaming podcast. And speaking of Ravi, there he is. And yeah, he invited me down last year, and then at the after party on the Saturday night, I think we'd all had one too many drinks, and he said, "Oh, you should have a table next year. It's going to be even bigger and better." And I can't believe that was over a year ago now, but there you go. And it seems he didn't forget, and he did remind me a couple of times in the intervening months, and just asked me to confirm, "Are you definitely coming down? Are you definitely going to have a table?" And I thought, you know what, let's do it. Never done anything like this before. So that's what I did. I showed up at the Notts County Football Ground with a whole car full of stuff. The reason I took so much stuff, incidentally, is because I was expecting something to break over the course of the weekend. I mean, this stuff's very old. It doesn't get a lot of use. I kind of use it for my own personal stuff, but and some of it hadn't even been fired up for a couple of years. And I thought, well, I don't want broken computers and broken consoles on display on my table. So what I'll do is I'll bring spares. And then when I got there, it turned out that the Leicester Computer Museum, unfortunately, had to pull out right at the last minute because they just didn't have enough volunteers. They've moved into a bigger building recently, and I am going to go and check that out. But basically, they need volunteers to run that and just couldn't spare the people to come up to the actual show, which is sad. It's unfortunate, but it does mean that I got their table. So I ended up with this huge, long table. And I got everything out of the car and started setting things up, and I actually ended up just basically having everything set up that I'd taken with me. And it all worked. It all worked absolutely flawlessly over the course of the weekend. No issues whatsoever. Loads of really happy people. It was so great to meet so many people and talk to people. None of the old bants or the old rivalry, of course, between the Amiga and the Atari ST owners. Nothing, maybe a little bit of light-hearted ribbing, but certainly none of the quite sad stuff that you see on the internet sometimes, which is really great. And when I actually sat down and recorded the outro for this video, and I promise I'm not going to spend too much more time talking about this, but when I sat down and recorded the outro for this video, I ended up waffling for about 10 minutes for the first kind of 5 or 6 takes, because I wanted to kind of really make a big point about that and about just how much nicer it is and how different it is to actually talk to these people in person and to meet people in person, because people are just universally nice and generally interested in what each other are doing. So, it was really, really great. And of course, the whole theme of my table, if you haven't seen the video, and I do urge you to go and watch the video because hopefully you'll find it interesting, the whole theme of the table was the shared history between Atari and Commodore, and of course the Amiga and the ST, Jack Tramiel, all of that kind of stuff. And I just spent the weekend talking to people about that kind of aspect of Commodore and Atari history. And that concept is actually based around a video idea that I've had since the very early days of my YouTube channel. It's something I've been really wanting to cover. And every time I start digging into it, the rabbit hole just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think I can't do this justice, but I will do it. I promise I will cover that at some point in a future video and to do a proper deep dive into the actual, the shared history. Of course, Jay Miner designed the Lorraine chipset in the Amiga. Originally worked at Atari. In fact, he worked at Atari when he was designing that chipset. And when he spun it off into its own company and it looked like the company was going to go bust, Atari actually bankrolled him and kept him in business. Of course, they had their own kind of vested interest in potentially wanting to take that computer to market as well. But hey, if it wasn't for Atari, the Amiga probably wouldn't exist. And likewise, if it wasn't for the Amiga, the ST wouldn't exist. So I think that shared history and that shared heritage is very important. And of course, that's a very kind of oversimplified look at things, but something that I do want to cover at some point in the future. But that was my video on the Kickstart Amiga show. And I suppose while we're talking about it, and I know people like to see behind the scenes of this kind of stuff, the analytics of that video has done absolutely incredibly well for this channel. It's been by far my most popular video on my second channel, 4,400 views. The clickbaity title of I Brought Atari STs to an Amiga Show probably helps quite a lot. But lots of early views from people who were at the show and enjoyed seeing my stand and wanted to see a bit more about the story behind it. So thank you ever so much to all of those people, of course, all the wonderful people that have watched that video and have helped it to succeed. But quite importantly, or more importantly, the people that I actually met on the day, on the weekend. Loads of fantastic people. And again, I could get into shout-outs, I could name individual people, but I would be sat here all day, and I'd also inevitably miss someone. So let's just do a blanket thank you to everyone. And with that out of the way, let's dive into some news for this week. So for my first story this week, I'm going to talk a little bit about a console that I don't really have any hands-on experience with personally. I've got loads of experience with its predecessor, and indeed there's a really comprehensive guide to modding that for composite video over on my website, which has actually proven really useful to people over the years. Had loads of great feedback on that. Can't take credit for the mod itself, but I was kind of the person who took it and actually documented it in great detail for people. Kind of proud of that one. That page does get a lot of traffic, but I'm talking about the Famicom, of course, Nintendo's original version of the NES, the NES, and this story concerns its successor, its follow-up, the Super Famicom, or the Super NES, SNES, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, whatever you want to call it. And this is a mod that has been a very, very long time in the making. I've been following Voultar, who created this, over on Twitter for a very long time, and he's been talking about it and developing it and working on it for a very long time. And it's finally become available, it's finally been completed, and quite a big moment in the world of the SNES, I think. So let's dive straight into this. This is on timeextension.com, and the headline is, Jaw-dropping SNES mod fixes one of the console's biggest problems. And I should just say up front, I'm going to apologise to my American listeners here because I'm going to keep calling it the SNES. That's just the Brit in me. But anyway, so this mod basically fixes an issue with the original version of the SNES, which is the 2-chip version. So among collectors, the later 1-chip version is actually the more desirable one because it has a better video output. And it's been a very long-running problem, and there have been various fixes and things that try to take that sort of slightly fuzzy signal and clean it up. But this has actually gone back to basics, back to the roots, and he's kind of reverse-engineered the actual PPU itself, found out what the underlying issue is, and developed a piece of hardware that actually fixes this once and for all in conjunction with the original hardware. It doesn't replace the original PPU or anything like that. Kind of keeps it as original as possible while also addressing this one specific issue. So it's a very cool thing. And so the tweet is, my friends, the SNES Edge Enhancer is ready. I've built my final production sample prototype and the long wait has been well worth it. I've squeezed every pixel of performance I can out of the 2-chip SNES's DAC. The DAC being the digital to analog converter, of course, which takes that picture and turns it into the analog signal, which gets transferred over to the TV, however you do it. This is now a complete solution outputting cleaned CVBS and S-video. And he has included a comparison screenshot with that tweet, which kind of says it all, really. But we've got a screenshot from Zelda here, and the original is a little bit fuzzy. The colours are kind of a little bit vague, a little bit. I'm not sure if these are compression artifacts you can see on the roof here, or if that's kind of jail barring / banding or whatever from the graphics chip. But yeah, the after picture on the right looks like it's from an emulator or from MiSTer or something. It is absolutely pixel perfect. It's super sharp. It looks fantastic. And that's from original hardware, which is really cool. So if you're using your SNES with an upscaler like a RetroTink or something like that to play it on a modern display, this is going to make a massive difference to you. So yeah, here it is. And the time extension story here just kind of goes on to explain in detail the difference between the two consoles, the 2-chip and the 1-chip, if you're interested in that. Nintendo revised the console with a single video chip in 1995, hence the birth of 1-chip and 2-chip designations. And while some 2-chip systems are better than others, I'm reading this straight from the website here, they all pale in comparison to the image clarity you find in a 1-chip console, which had led to those particular models becoming more desirable, as I said. And of course the SNES, it supports RGB output, supports S-video output and composite. Really well equipped console. Of course we would have been using SCART in the UK on a lot of TVs back in the day. And this mod actually fixes the output of all of those. It fixes the actual underlying issue, which is really cool. And developed from scratch, reverse engineer the PPU, as mentioned. There are 5 wires to solder in. He does mention that he could have designed it so it was easier to install. But the trouble with that is that there have been ever so slight variations in the actual SNES hardware itself during that production run, and so making something universal kind of forced him down this route of having these 5 wires to solder. But it's 5 wires. I mean, I think anyone with kind of rudimentary soldering skills should be okay with that. And of course, there are plenty of installers and modders out there who can do this work for you if you're interested in having this done. But yeah, some more screenshots here just showing the differences. It looks super sharp, it looks great, and just wanted to draw attention to this really because the SNES is a console that I've never really been into, and it's one that I'd quite like to get into and have a play with and have a look at. And if and when I do, I'll almost definitely be installing one of these mods because it looks great, it really does. And I can certainly see a lot of modded consoles coming onto the market with this already pre-done as well in the very near future. So it's finished, it's ready for production, ready to go. I did check out his website because he did say that they were ready to go on sale, but doesn't seem to be listed on his website just yet alongside his other mods. Of course, he's well known for his N64 RGB mods and the... you can see it all over on his website. He's done some great stuff with consoles. But yeah, just wanted to draw attention to that because I think if you own a 2-chip SNES and you want to get the absolute best out of it, probably well worth doing. Now, if you are a regular around here, you will no doubt know that I'm a huge fan of the MiSTer multi-system. Of course, it takes the MiSTer, which is based around that DE10 Nano FPGA board, which I keep talking about every week, and just kind of consoleizes it and turns it into a nice form factor for people like me who perhaps don't want to put too much thought into all of the various hardware add-ons and things that you can get for the MiSTer. Of course, fantastic little ecosystem of devices and add-ons and upgrades and things built around that board. So you can customize it in any way that you like. But as far as I was concerned, I'd been looking at the system for a couple of years, didn't want to make any sort of decisions, and I had analysis paralysis, I think it's fair to say. So it was good that someone came along and said, look, here's the board, here's what it does, take it or leave it. And I thought, hey, these people are speaking my language. And that's been on the market for a couple of years now, of course, been a huge success, and I don't think I've regretted buying that even once since I got it. So very cool device. And of course, I know the people at Heber. I should be kind of open about that. They have had extensive coverage on my various channels because they're good people. Good friends with Neil as well at RMC. And they've just announced their latest thing. Now, I have to confess, I have seen this thing in the flesh. I've been in the same room as it. I haven't personally used it, but I've been there while it's being used and saw inside it and saw some testing and stuff that was going on internally at Heber a couple of months back. I think I mentioned it in my ramble at the time, but of course I couldn't go into any detail about what it actually was. It wasn't my place to say. But very pleased that this thing is now out in the open as of a couple of days ago. And it's called the MultiPi. So it's not a MiSTer thing, it's a Raspberry Pi based thing. So of course the other kind of big platform for running all of those old games and things is the Raspberry Pi, and it does a fantastic job of it. Loads of very happy Pi users out there. And if you go and look on eBay, you can buy one in a console-shaped case, loaded up with loads of stolen ROMs. And you can sit down and play all those old games to your heart's content. But this is a bit more of a professional offering, so I really like the look of this. So it uses the Pi Compute Module 4, which of course is the the kind of industrial version of the Pi. It doesn't have any of the ports and things on it. It's designed to be fitted into another board and have that board, that kind of external board, provide all the ports and things. Very much in the same vein as the multi-system, of course, and the way that it does that with the DE10. And it just looks like a really cool product, doesn't it? So this has been announced over on Twitter, and they have a page all about it on their website. I've just checked, and it doesn't seem to be available for pre-order in their shop just yet, although they do say that pre-orders will be open this month, so keep an eye out for those. But I just thought I'd go over what it is. So I think perhaps the one thing that this brings to the table, which I think is potentially going to be quite interesting, is the cartridge slot. So on the multi-system, they added a cartridge slot to the MiSTer, and there's been a bit of an ecosystem of stuff that plugs into that slot. So there's an MT32Pi cartridge that adds MT32, of course, MIDI device support, and there are video cartridges that add different video outputs and that kind of stuff. And they've started the ball rolling with this in a very similar vein. So they have added they have made available a video cartridge for it as one of the first offerings. So, of course, as standard, most people are going to set this thing up. They're going to use the composite video output on an old TV or whatever. Or they're going to use the HDMI output to use it on a modern TV, and that's going to be perfectly fine. But if you've got something a bit more advanced that can take a SCART input or a VGA input, you might want to add that to the MultiPi. And so they have announced this AV card, which adds all of those things, RGB, SCART and VGA, and indeed proper analog phono or RCA output for the audio. And yeah, it's a cool thing. It's a really clever idea. Of course, it connects to the GPIO pins on the Pi. They've done a lot of work on the software side of things on this as well to hook all of this stuff up. So, of course, that will all be kind of part of the console. I don't know if they're going to be releasing their own tweaked distribution of the Raspberry Pi OS and that stuff. Not my place to say, but they've added a PCIe X1 port, so you can actually add an NVMe or solid state drive to the system, and you can actually use that to boot and, of course, store all of the stuff that you're running on there. It has 6 USB ports, so it's got a 7-port hub. There's 1 internal port and 6 external. Of course, you can use for 4 controllers hooked to the front and a keyboard and mouse hooked up to the back, and it's got all the Pi stuff, Wi-Fi, and everything else. It offers an external antenna indeed for a reliable wireless connection. So it's powered by a single 5-volt external power supply. It has a physical power switch at the front. Of course, it's a Pi, so you can boot from micro SD or from that NVMe drive. And it's a 3D printed enclosure similar to the multi-system, of course. Heber being kind of one of the world leaders in 3D printing, I think it's fair to say. I mean, Richard, the guy who owns the place, I actually literally wrote the book on it, and just thought this was a really cool little project because, of course, you see people slapping Raspberry Pis into little 3D printed cases that are modelled after, old consoles and things, and slapping a load of ROMs on there and RetroArch, and it's fine. But to take that and kind of try to turn it into a bit more of a professional product and a bit more of a complete package, and indeed something that's kind of designed with expandability and hardware add-ons in mind, I think is a really cool project. It's a really interesting project. And it's great to see this supported. Of course, they also did the Aegon Lite, which is that 8-bit console as well. They've got the MiSTer multi-system, and very much becoming a bit of a mover and a shaker in the world of retro gaming. So cool to see. It's a very cool device. Like I say, I do have some hands-on experience with it. Would like to get my hands on one and actually have a play with it properly. Now it's a bit more final. And that will be available for pre-order later on this month. In another vaguely MiSTer-related story this week, or it's not really vague at all, is it? It's actually directly related to MiSTer, so let's roll with this. Of course, there has been a development in the world of light guns. Used to love a good light gun back in the day. Of course, there was Duck Hunt on the NES, or the NES, if you like, or the Famicom. And, the Super Scope, and then, of course, all the consoles back in those days, in the 8 and 16-bit days, had their own light guns. Even the Spectrum had its own light gun. And of course, kind of peaked, I think, with the PlayStation, with Point Blank and what was the other one? Die Hard Trilogy, proper kind of arcade quality light gun games at home. And then later on, we got the Wii, of course, with its motion controllers, with some light gun style games on that. But by and large, I think it's fair to say that light guns have kind of fallen out of fashion, which is a bit of a shame. And part of that is a technical reason to do with how they actually worked. Of course, the original ones used the timing of the CRT and how it actually drew the lines on the screen to determine where it was aimed. And when flat panel displays came along, of course, that all went out the window. The solution with the Wii was to add the external sensor, but yeah, it kind of killed them off, which is a bit of a shame. So there is one retro-styled project which has been going on in the background for years and years now. Of course, the Sinden Lightgun. I've played with them. I don't actually own one, but I've played with plenty of them over the years, and it's a great system. You know, it's adding Lightgun support to emulators and stuff like that. Predominantly designed with the PC in mind, but of course also works with Raspberry Pi-based solutions and others. And indeed, so all a roundabout way of saying that it's now come to MiSTer, which is fantastic if you own a Sinden Lightgun and you want to play those Lightgun games on the MiSTer platform. So yeah, this is an official release, and the cool thing about this, now I thought that the way that this was going to work was that there were going to be like specifically modified MiSTer cores for this, because of course you've got a separate core for every system on that platform. And, you know, I thought the support for the Lightgun would have to be baked into the core, and it would either have to be officially adopted by the core maintainer or be a separate fork. The whole thing would just end up being a huge mess. But this is really elegant. So this is a separate driver that you install on the MiSTer, and it's basically handled by kind of the Linux side of that system. And yeah, it supports the Master System and Mega Drive. It supports the NES. And it supports the PlayStation. And of course, there will be support for more platforms coming in future, including arcade games, hopefully. But as an initial release, I think this certainly has lots of interesting stuff to offer. So you do need a PC for kind of part of the configuration process for this. But other than that, once it's all set up, it's all good to go on the MiSTer itself. And there is a demo video here on their official YouTube channel, just showing this being used with a few of the different cores, showing off the latency. Of course, it's incredibly low, very, very playable, even on these modern displays. Showing off some kind of faster paced games and things, and just putting it through its paces and showing how everything works. So yeah, we've got, I think this is Time Crisis here on the PlayStation, as you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube. Apologies if you're listening to this on the podcast platforms, but it's just like the arcade game with the proper light gun and stuff. They actually sell an official pedal attachment for this as well, if you want the full experience. And it goes through and it shows some, of course, you've got Point Blank in here. Absolute classic game on the PlayStation, classic light gun game. And this is such a cool project to see. I thought this was really good. A proper light gun on the MiSTer. Of course, it has that white border around the screen, which is just a byproduct of how the actual Sinden Lightgun works. It doesn't rely on any kind of external hardware for tracking or anything like that. But yeah, it does add a white border to stuff that you play. I found in reality, I've played with these, and you do tune that out. I know some people some people have complained in the past about that being distracting, but it's a thing. If you own the Sinden Lightgun, you'll be used to it. If you don't, you can get used to it. But this might be the thing that pushes me over the edge to actually buying one. I've come so close to buying these so many times over the years, and yeah, playing Point Blank on MiSTer, that's a very compelling offering, I think. And so we find ourselves at Video of the Week, my weekly video bit where I recommend a video that I've seen this week. And I just want to say to, there is something that goes along with this that I just want to say to someone who I met at Kickstart at the weekend. Big fan of the channel, big long-running fan and big supporter of the channel, so thank you ever so much. You gave me a gift which was going to enhance this segment of my rambles. And I left it at home, and I'm really sorry, and I'm in a rush to get this done, and I've not got time to go back and fetch it. So next week you will see that in action, and it will herald a new era of Video of the Week. So we'll keep people waiting for that, shall we? Just between me and you. And yeah, I am really sorry. To everyone else who's probably incredibly confused by all of that, let's dive straight in. So this is a video from Rob Smith, my new best friend, or certainly one of my new best friends after the weekend. Of course, known as the person behind retro.directory, which is a fantastic website where you can list your museum or YouTube channel or whatever retro services that you might be offering. He's done loads of other projects in the hardware world and in the Amiga world specifically, stuff to do with floppy disks and making everyone's lives easier. And just a all-round nice chap. And he was my neighbour at Kickstart last week. He was on the next table to me, and he built this contraption which was very, very noisy. And we did kind of joke between us right at the beginning of the weekend that it was going to end up being the absolute bane of my existence. But I'm pleased to report that no, we were still laughing about it at the end of the day on the Sunday. It's fun. It's a bit of fun. And it's this thing, this crazy contraption. What is this crazy contraption? That's the title of the video. It's 22 minutes long and it's on his channel, Rob Smith Dev. And what he has built is, how do you describe it? It's a car wash for floppy disks. So, you know, an automated car wash that you drive into and your car is kind of towed along through the thing as brushes and things come down and it's sprayed, and then at the end you've got the dryers and things that dry it off. He's built that in miniature for 3.5-inch floppy disks. And he uses IPA to actually clean the surface of the disk. It's fully automated. It plays jolly tunes as it goes through the various stages. And yeah, it's it's a load of fun. And he built the entire thing from scratch. So it's all 3D printed. And this video is great. So it goes through the whole design process of how he actually designed the thing, how he 3D printed all of the parts. It's all Arduino powered. So, of course, electronics, you know, you've got electronic stuff, you've got mechanical stuff, you've got actual code running on this. He's written all the code to make it run. The guy's a genius, an evil genius, who's probably going to end up taking over the world with one of these machines, and will probably be smiling and laughing as he does it, because he's a nut job. But I did genuinely love this thing, and I actually watched this before the show because I knew he was going to be on the next table to me, and he had mentioned this to me previously, or at least hinted at it, and I wanted to see what it was all about. And really, really great video. If you're into people making stuff, building stuff, designing stuff, and it's just really well presented, really well kind of told story, just you know, the various small revisions and things that he had to make to the design as he went along. Just a really fascinating thing to kind of see come together. So it's part one in a series. I know he's working on part two. I know it's going to be out very, very soon. And that'll be covering kind of the finished thing and the weekend and just kind of how well it worked and everything. Spoiler alert, it worked great. But yeah, great video. Love this one a lot, and I got a lot of love for Rob now, having spent all of that time with him in the trenches at the show. So I thought the least I could do would be to give him a shout out to his amazing project. And if you enjoyed this, there's loads of other similar stuff on his channel as well. So that's video of the week, and yeah, next week look forward to an even bigger and better and improved video of the week segment. But you can't get better than that, can you? And finally, I thought I would round out this week's Ramble offering with some anniversary shout-outs. There have been 3 big anniversaries in the world of internet culture and retro computing, retro vintage gaming, whatever you want to call it. I'm never really sure what to call what I do. Whatever you do, someone's going to argue with it. But yeah, 3 big anniversaries this week that I really wanted to acknowledge because they've kind of been influences on me, and just think it's noteworthy. I don't have to justify myself. And the first one I think you're going to be totally in agreement with, and that is, of course, Clint from LGR. 15 years uploading YouTube videos. His channel first started as Lazy Game Reviews back in 2009. YouTube itself had not been going all that long. I mean, when did YouTube launch? Was it like 2006, 2007? And he has been a constant in all of our lives ever since, I think it's fair to say. I think if you watch my channel, you probably more than likely watch his channel as well, and probably have been watching him for a long time. Back in those days, I used to watch him and I used to think, you know what, I could give this YouTube thing a go at some point, and I've loved every minute of it. It's been 4 years for my channel this year, and 5 years actually. And I think my only regret is that I didn't start it sooner, and I really wish I kind of had back in those days when I was watching Clint at university. And yeah, he's always been kind of very genuine, very enthusiastic, very open about stuff. Never sold out, never kind of done any kind of dodgy sponsor stuff, or no kind of drama around him or around his channel or anything like that. So that's how he stood the test of time. Just been consistent, very high quality, very interesting, entertaining. It's just a guy showing you the interesting gadget or computer or operating system or game or whatever it is that he's obsessed with for any given week. And yeah, big inspiration. So yeah, shout out to Clint, and of course, congratulations, very well earned after all the hard work that you've put in. And who knows? Who knows where this thing might lead? It's grown consistently year on year, and indeed it has been his full-time job for a very long time. One of the first, I think, retro YouTubers to go full-time. So great to see that he's still doing so well after all of these years. Now, the next anniversary that I want to talk about is something a little bit different. This is salad fingers, if you remember this. Huge part of internet culture. I was at college back in 2004 when this started, so of course this is the 20th anniversary, and it was a weird flash animation on a website called Newgrounds, made by a guy called David Firth. I was a member of B3TA, the image board, back in the day. Used to make some weird stuff myself and contribute it, although never really got into Flash. And to see this still going after 20 years, and indeed he has made a few episodes over the years, it is really, really kind of cool to see. And it's just as weird as it ever was, and dark and strange. It's a very kind of peculiarly British kind of humour. Of course, back in the day we had like League of Gentlemen and that kind of thing. Monkey Dust, if you remember that, on BBC Three. All inspired by this kind of early internet flash animation. And great to see it still going. And I watched this and very nostalgic. Loads of kind of callbacks to previous episodes and previous characters and things. So if that's something that you watched 20 years ago and have since forgotten about, and the fact that it's still around is news to you, then I hope I've been of service. Of course, that will be linked in the usual places, along with all the other stuff that I've talked about this week. And the third anniversary that I want to talk about, which is a little bit different to the previous two. Can't really weave a connection between all of these. So, yeah, this is FreeDOS, the free implementation of MS-DOS, of course. This has been going for 30 years now, and it's free. So, if you want to run DOS on vintage hardware, on newer hardware, under an emulator, anything like that, FreeDOS is a fantastic choice. It's incredibly compatible and configurable. Got loads of great tools to set it up and kind of go over and above that kind of raw DOS experience from back in the day. And I'm a big fan of the project. I've done lots of stuff with it myself, and it's great to see that it's been 30 years. And indeed, like I say, it runs on everything from those very earliest XT class machines all the way up to your modern machines, and it's a great choice for everything, for DOS gaming, DOS applications, and all the rest of it. Anyway, now I'm getting to the point where I'm waffling, which of course I always do towards the end of these things because I never know how to wrap them up. So with that, I think I will wish you a very good weekend, and thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next week. Bye.